escalation techniques. This is presented by Vantage Point Consulting. My name is Patrick Todd, and if you had the fortune to be on the earlier webinars from Vantage Point with the IFASC, you may have met my voice a little bit earlier. I have a degree in human resource development from Indiana State, and I've got my certified healthcare manager from Indiana University SPIA, Bloomington and Indianapolis campus. And then I also hold a certified healthcare emergency professional. Not sure what it's good for, but it's just something I picked up along the way. And then for some odd reason, I've been tricked into pursuing my master's degree in healthcare administration through the University of Southern Indiana, as well as working in healthcare since right around the year 2000, 2001. I've also been a police officer in Indiana since 1995. I've worked in full-time status positions and part-time status positions, and I currently do that on a part-time while I work for healthcare security full-time. And then as well, I work for Vantage Point Consulting in the role as a senior consultant, and Vantage Point Consulting is based out of Carmel, Indiana, just on the north side of Indianapolis. So I want to thank all of you, especially Ann Haddix, for allowing Vantage Point to provide this with the use of ASPR grant funding to provide some safety training for those of you who work in surgery centers. And today we want to cover some of the importance of de-escalation and how we handle that, discuss some preventive options and preparedness for de-escalating family members, patients, visitors, even staff members who may become upset through situations sometimes beyond our control. Discuss a little bit about safety measures and de-escalation techniques, and again, focus on the importance of training. Sometimes we get so focused on just working the business that we forget to get a little bit of extra training in there and make sure that we can have a training budget set aside so that our employees and our staff members and our workforce teammates have tools just like anything else. So we need to make sure that we're prepared for a lot of different things. As in prior webinars, I want to kind of cover stuff to keeping safe in an ambulatory surgery center. Surgery centers face very unique dangers. So OSHA, if you haven't looked lately, lists healthcare workers in the top 4 most dangerous professions within the United States. There is a 2013 issued or written document that came out of OSHA that covers all the amount of fatalities alone. I believe 27 out of 100 fatalities in the healthcare workplace are as a result of homicides or assaults on healthcare workers. So it is a very dangerous profession. Now, surgery centers vary from hospitals because the hospitals can easily absorb the expense of having security on site. And Indiana recently enacted the legislation recognizing the dangers that hospitals and healthcare areas go through, that a board of directors can create their own hospital-specific police departments. So those of you who may be affiliated with like Indiana University or Parkview, those 2 facilities I know have their own unique police departments. Now those officers don't go out and usually serve arrest warrants, and some of them have some high-end weaponry, but they are specialized units to healthcare settings. Now, privately owned ambulatory surgery centers or totally independent surgery centers are not allowed by laws of yet to create one, but you definitely want to make sure you have a relationship with your local law enforcement, your local police department, wherever you may work and be at, so that they know where you are. And a lot of times surgery centers may be in business complexes that can be kind of confusing. Signage may be congested in an area, and so you always want to make sure that if you can invite law enforcement in for a pointed meeting and have officers that will stop in to say hello, it's very advantageous whenever you need them quickly. Now, every surgery center should really go through a risk assessment. And this can look externally at your properties of what's safe, what's not, how your environmental layouts and your traffic flow goes, that your signage is appropriate for your area and is well understood. Usually when we build something or when we create something ourselves, we've already got the end in mind of how we want it to look, and so we read into a lot of stuff, and it's like, hey, I want this wall to be white, so whatever I paint it, it's going to be the color I really want it until the task is done. And sometimes then when somebody comes in that's not involved and they see this, and it's like, that wasn't the end result that I wanted at all, or wasn't what I wanted to have portrayed at all. So to get an independent review of your facility is a good idea to have a risk assessment done. And those of you who are owned or affiliated with hospitals, those are usually reviewed by the Joint Commission or HFAP. There's also a new one, the DNV out of Europe, and I'm not sure what the acronym stands for. I can't really pronounce it, but it's a newer assessment out of Europe. So you should have some sort of a risk assessment performed by a parent organization, and independent ones can also, if maybe already Joint Commission accredited themselves or HFAP accredited. If not, there are templates out there, like I mark Kaiser Permanente here on the slides, that you can download, search, and download for free. They're templates that can evaluate hazards as well as particular security audits. But the security audits can really get in depth and even go back to review your neighborhood crime areas with the local police departments, or reviewing FBI data the local police departments file in order to keep the federal government up to speed on what's going on in their area for grant requirements. So ambulatory surgery centers face uncooperative patients and family members. They get angry, they get mad, things go bad, or they're just temperamental. We also have medication abuse and drug-seeking behaviors. People come in and it's like, well, I want something stronger than that. That's just a Tylenol 3, and I need a hydrocodone. So sometimes they'll argue, and a lot of times these people may know exactly what milligram that they want or need or would like to have. And they can get upset if they don't get what they want, because I'm paying for this, I want what I want. We also have patients that have been restricted from using certain medications prior to surgery, so it modifies their behavior. So, a lot of them will have to be off certain thinners or something like that. Sometimes you have the ability to give them medications that help sedate. Some eye surgery centers can help give Xanaxes prior to laser eye surgery to help relax a patient. So sometimes it can also work in your favor. But sometimes restricting certain medications prior to surgery, we know, does modify behavior. Of course, patients with a criminal nature are sometimes just problematic for us. They don't adhere to the norms of society. They do what they want to do. They expect to be catered to, and they expect that, well, I'm paying for this, I'm going to go ahead and take this, or they're going to get it out of me one way or the other. And for some facilities, even if you call the police on them, then they get more rowdy. It's just because, well, if I'm going to jail, I might as well make it worth my while. And those are becoming really frequent as people become more disrespectful to authoritative figures. And so we deal with a lot of patients with a criminal nature, and they are consumers, so we have to deal with them, but we want to be able to do it in a safe manner and make sure that they abide by our rules and regulations inside our facilities, and also hopefully become return consumers and help our business nature. Now, ambulatory surgery centers also may be in rough neighborhoods or have rough areas of service. And I'm sure most of you, if you work in this area, you already should have plans in place for keeping yourself safe, especially after hours. Simple things like knowing how well lit your facility is from the inside when it's getting dark early outside, and that you essentially become a fishbowl, and keeping in mind how people can see you from the outside and how you walk to your vehicle and how lit the parking lot is. So those are things we want to take into account for in monitoring our areas of service. Of course, medical malpractice accusations. Several physicians I've worked with said, it's definitely more of an art than a science, and one of them tells me a lot of times that it's better to be lucky than good, because there is a lot of things that can go wrong. There's a million things that can go wrong in even a minor surgery, and sometimes that may be out of our hands, whether it be an equipment failure, lighting failure, computer failures, whatever. But everybody is we live in a very litigation-happy society. Everybody's got an attorney in their back pocket, so medical malpractice accusations can come flying off the shelf, and they know most people would rather settle something privately, confidentially, than having to go through a big public court hearing. So, but we definitely have those people that were going to try and draw us into some sort of malpractice accusation. Some other risks that the surgery centers may look at is patients recovering from anesthesia that come out groggy, not sure where they are. I enjoyed the folks from the dental surgery center up in the Indianapolis area that made it on Ellen with a young girl who was coming out of anesthesia after her wisdom teeth removal. and that her brothers played the joke on her about the zombies that were going to be attacking the world, and how they had to decide whether or not to take the cat and the dog. And so many of you who've probably seen people come out of anesthesia have some sort of story to tell about patient recovery. Then you have patient family reactions to unexpected events. Especially when you have parents that their children are going under for some sort of situation, something doesn't go right, or they're overbearing. You have patients discharged that are unsatisfied with service, that didn't get what they want, or are just not happy with how things are going. We also have patients and staff that are part of the domestic violence and abuse situation or abuse chain. There we need to make sure we provide levels of protection for people, but we'll talk a little bit on de-escalation of those situations. And then I always like to throw in that the physician providers are fighting for scheduling access, and most of these people are very strong-willed individuals that are used to getting what they want when they need it, and they've got a lot of burdens, a lot of stressors. They're trying to run a business, make sure they bring in income, provide a living for themselves and for their family, but also making sure that they can meet their payroll and all their budgets. So our physicians and our medical providers are just under a lot of stress from the word go, and so sometimes we can see that, and sometimes we feel that from them. Of course, bill and payment disputes, no matter what another issue is from above, whether they're unsatisfied with service or had their surgery had to be delayed or whatever, whenever somebody's unhappy, then a few weeks goes by and they get the bill. That usually reignites the whole process, and then they become explosive again, and we have to fall back into de-escalating some sort of situation with them. And of course, terminated employees, we have to be able to de-escalate situations when we're handling aggressive or overly assertive employees that we've terminated at that point in time, or that we have are already terminated in the past and that have returned for further argument. We want to make sure that we can provide services and de-escalate those people without getting into a physical altercation. So that being said, I firmly feel that de-escalation techniques can be considered, I'm going to have to speak very much better, but the de-escalation techniques can be considered skill sets. So similar to your medical staff or your physician, your operating room staff performing physical activities like starting IVs, or they're performing surgeries and manipulating things, doing eye surgery or dental surgery or anything like that. For myself, as being in law enforcement and healthcare security, I've done a lot of de-escalation training, and I train and teach a lot of others in de-escalation techniques, and I know it's not something that, for a lot of people, it doesn't come natural. A lot of people just don't like confrontation. They want to get their task done, but it really is necessary. And if you think how many lives you may hold, or how quickly you can alter somebody's life, it's very much worthwhile training in order to be able to de-escalate people safely and manage them without it going to a physical level. And so it takes a chunk of training, similar to what we're doing right here, and just formulating some plans and talking about it, and implementing ways to de-escalate people. But it takes a use and practice, role-playing in the mind as to how we would handle situations, or going back in the past and, well, how would I have handled this situation a little bit better with that patient last week, or the mother of the young fellow that we had to escort out, or something like that. And constantly making sure that we're doing it the safest we can, because we want to provide services for people. We want them coming back to us for our own future gain, as well as providing services for people. So again, the escalation skills are not easy, but it's a necessary skill set. So the escalation is very important in order to manage incidents safely and professionally. Okay, you just don't want it to go to a physical violent episode. As much as possible, you always want to make sure that you have a phone available. Should it have to go to a physical altercation, you have to call 911. Those are the kind of things that you want to make sure that you have thought out thoroughly before a situation results from a physical episode. So de-escalating a situation is very important, and especially from a management level. Improperly handling an angry customer is going to result in a more dangerous situation, much more likely to make them go into a physical episode, much more likely to increase chances of litigation. and you know you're going to risk losing future business. And then for a lot of people nowadays, as soon as they walk out or even before they're out the door, they're already on Facebook and Twitter condemning the facility, condemning the doctor, condemning the staff. And almost every person is like a walking billboard anymore, where they post on the social media or hashtag something, and it comes through. There's a lot of software that we use for law enforcement, and a lot of private entities are using it now to track social media in their area. And you can draw a boundary. You can pull up, say, Google Maps on the internet. And when you have this software, you can pull up the mapping system. You can draw a square or map or a boundary around a facility. And then you can, with a few adjustments, you can see every piece of social media, tweet, Facebook post, whatever have you, that is coming out of that boundary area. So you can essentially draw a circle around the place where you work and watch any sort of social media posting out of that area from a geolocation through internet protocol addresses, through IP addresses. So a lot of large companies use that to monitor what's going on inside their facilities. And then law enforcement, we can use it if somebody is, you know, say a riot's going on, and we can set an umbrella up over that area and kind of see what's going on social media to see what people are trying to encourage them to do, or where they're being encouraged to go, because that's the height of the communication process right now through social media. And so it's very important that that you handle social media posts on your own Facebook pages correctly, and everybody should probably have a policy somewhat governing the social media policy of employees. But whenever your facility has a official or formal Facebook page, you want to make sure that you handle any Facebook complaints postings to your page properly, and so they don't get taken out of context or used against you later, or get into a fight on Facebook. Now, when people, especially our staff, our frontline staff, are usually the ones that are going to be trying to handle initially the de-escalation of a patient or a person who's upset. So our staff members, they need to know some of their own limitations. Some folks that we have out front may just not be very good de-escalators. They just may not have the skill set. So they need to recognize, you know, are they a people person, or are they not a people person? Do they blow their top quickly? Or can they let insults kind of go down their back? So staff members really need to know their limitations, and they need to know how far they engage with this person, or when do they need to hand that person off to someone else. For many facilities, the frontline staff just do not have the time or the training or the skill sets to handle dissatisfied customers. And a lot of times a dissatisfied customer will come up and, you know, say, I want to see the manager, I want to see the boss, I want to see the doctor who's in charge. And so to even if you're not able to hand them off to that person, whoever's in charge or whomever the manager is, or they cannot see the doctor, and so for the most part you don't want them to get right to the doctor, who do they hand that person off to? So you want to make sure that there is clear guidance for your frontline staff on who is the point person for handling a lot of the complaints. And so your staff members have tools to correct the issue, and not necessarily just de-escalation training, but do they have things that they can use to placate the customer? So it's very important that our frontline staff is reviewed and talked to and gives their input and says, you know, I hear all these complaints about the vending machines never working, and if we could have a different vendor in here, I think that at least then we would have some drinks, and they can have some people in here that would take care of stuff. So our frontline staff can give us a lot of ideas and a lot of input on how to stop problems, or at least how to take people's mind off of their problems for the short-term period. So also for customer grievance avenues and ways to help correct problems immediately. Sometimes there's just things we can't correct right there on the fly, but there are avenues and ways and things that we can do to help people. Sometimes somebody gets stuck, so if we have ways of knowing some secondary lines of transportation, if we have just a company on call or a company you work with, that whenever somebody has a mechanical problem with their vehicle, then you say, oh, hey, Jack's Towing is just over here, and they come over here all the time. A lot of those different types of things, just ways to see what can happen to my patients or my visitors while they're here that I need to be able to give them things. I was broke down one time at the at the Atlanta Zoo, and I tried every tow truck company in the area, and all of them just to come and jump me was going to be at least $100, and it was going to be a 2-hour wait. And I finally walked over to one of the zoo staff, and they had a jumper box kit, and they jumped my vehicle and for free, and I was gone in about 10 minutes after once I spoke to them. So having those a few little things to help with your folks to placate individuals can go a long ways. So other places will have customer recovery policies, and that may be where you can give them something to a vending machine. So if they're upset with the wait, you can talk to them about you're sorry for the wait, and that certain things get take a long time to process, or if the physician was delayed. But you can offer them a discount card to a nearby restaurant, or you can offer them a gum or something. When we went to no smoking properties on a lot of our surgery centers and some of the other areas, we would offer packs of gum when we would go out and confront the smokers, and they would start getting upset and be like, we're sorry, we're just trying to make sure that it's a healthy environment, but I will offer you a pack of gum in order just to help so that you're not so angry about it. And a lot of them would chuckle and laugh, but they would accept the gum, and they wouldn't be so upset with us because we were trying to make amends with them a little bit. So to have some sort of customer recovery policy already pre-thought with what you can do, what your management will allow you to do or to give, can go a long way in providing a little bit of a de-escalation. And so again, is the staff member trained to handle this confrontation? There's a lot of different ways to train on de-escalation, but the best way is a little bit through experience and going through some scenarios face-to-face on how to manage different things. Because you really want to get down to, in order to solve the complaint, of course, is the truest nature of the complaint. What's the person most upset about that you're able to handle, that you're able to mitigate? Is it long wait times? As I got here, long procedure recovery. It's very hard for a lot of surgery centers, I think, especially that have a lot of moving ortho or something like that, that the people may wait a long time, or a surgery that's not going as fast as it should because they ran into complications when they got inside the person. Again, a device may go bad. So there's things that happen, and then people get upset, and so we have to mitigate that. All kinds of things can be the genesis of the nature of the complaint. And again, we have to understand is, can the staff members at that point in time actually alleviate the problem or change the situation? If they can't, they're going to have to acknowledge that in an appropriate manner that says, this is not something we can take care of today, but we will work on focusing on improving this situation. Now, before any confrontation that you can see it coming or while it's occurring, people have to remember to breathe. And it's not as simple as just breathing. For law enforcement, for private security, when we get into situations, we call it combat breathing. There's a new movement in healthcare, and it's not so new, it's several years old now. It's called heart math, and it's a breathing technique that nursing staff in particular really are liking, because it's calming them and centering them and helping them focus. And it's just those simple breathing techniques to breathe in for 4 seconds, hold it for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, and you repeat this a few times to slow your heart rate down, get your blood pressure under control, give you a few seconds of deep breathing. So whenever that confrontation is coming at you, or you have to go in to face somebody, it's really important to get yourself under control. Myself in particular, I'm a redhead, and so I have very fair skin, and if I get overexcited or even in a physical altercation and my skin gets rubbed, I get red. And so I ideally will look for other people who, as they're involved in a confrontation, or if they're nervous or something, they're stressed for some reason, and I'll start seeing those splotches on their skin. And brunettes do it as well. Blondes can do it per se. So, but if you watch for that, and I know I've dealt with particular people that will try and get me riled up just to see if I will flush a little bit, and they'll be angry a little bit. They'll get me riled up, then they'll start laughing and say, "Oh, I can see you're getting red," So you really have to watch how you physically present yourself, and calming yourself down, getting yourself relaxed a little bit helps in order to control yourself so that we don't explode should our buttons get pushed. And so some other things on the environmental side I want to add on staffing tools to help with problems. Make sure that you take a good environmental survey of your area. My kids at their orthodontist office has 3 or 4 sets of game centers and Xboxes, so the kids actually enjoy going in there. Now they know that they're going to have a little bit of pain coming, and that it's going to be a little bit discomfort, but they know that they get to play on the video games before and the video games while they're waiting on their others back in the appointment chairs. So the children are honestly very good about going to their orthodontist because they know they get to go in there and play a little bit. So having items in the waiting areas is incredibly important. Now, we sometimes feel like the cost isn't always warranted when we get the big screen TVs or we get the game stations, but it really does help us because we know to encourage repeat customers, that they want to be happy, they want to go to an environment that they feel comfortable in, and then, especially with dental areas that may have a lot of fearful patients, something that gives it a lot of distraction, and it buys time. So when the televisions are on and they're watching a show, people sometimes will lose track of time, and they're not so apt to complain about it. And then, like I spoke earlier about on appeasing complaints, vouchers and gift certificates and nearby adjustments, or bill adjustments. There's several facilities I've been at that allows midline management to somewhat adjust the bill, and it can go up to different levels if the bill needs to be adjusted in higher increments. Again, you always want to be careful in that because then you're impacting your bottom line, whether you desire to or not. But a lot of times people will complain because they expect some sort of bill adjustment to be made, or because they think they're going to get something out of it. So all in all, a sincere apology can go a very long way. People will readily say and hear you when you say, I'm sorry for having this problem that's going on. You don't necessarily have to own the problem, but it will just go a heck of a long way when you give a sincere apology. A fake one, when they realize, or even if they think that you're not being sincere, that will escalate the situation egregiously. And if you're not ready to say you're sorry, then that's maybe not the time to say you're sorry. Maybe the time to say you're sorry is with a follow-up letter or card from your facility explaining the situation. If you're a frontline staff member and you got to turn to your management to decide what the appropriate avenue or response is. But whenever there is a problem and you can own the problem, it's very good to make sure that you do own the problem and that you're understanding what they're going through. So again, when I talked about breathing, I talked about controlling our own emotions. So we have to maintain ourselves. We have to make sure that we are calm. Panic is very contagious. I see that a lot of times with people in the healthcare setting. They get nervous, they get scared, their voices start getting stressed, heightened, higher-pitched voices, and that just creates chaos. So panic just starts creating more panic. In law enforcement, I know police officers who when they're in pursuits on the radios, and I can tell that they're stressed out because their voices go up a couple octaves on the radio, and I know that they're not thinking as clearly as they can be. And we can all recognize that body language to a degree, and we hear those nonverbal cues and the verbal cues. So a person who is verbally escalating a bad situation is more likely to lose the physical control. So if you keep yourself low-keyed and keep your own emotions under control, that will also kind of create an air of, okay, this person is listening to me. They're not exploding. They're not yelling back at me. We're going to get the situation resolved, hopefully. So no matter how angry or appalled we need to be about the situation, we are considered the professional. No matter if we may not be the physician, we may not be a nurse, we may be a billing person, we may just be a secretary or even a groundskeeper that's called in to help a situation. But no matter what, we've got to keep ourselves in check so that we don't make things worse. So we have to stay calm ourselves. Now, it's very important that we don't talk down to them. There is just a lot of jargon in the healthcare world. So when we start talking to people, even about if they have prescriptions to follow up with or procedures or lap draws, and you start talking about, well, either ETOH level was too high for this procedure when they came in today, or they need to have taken this TID versus BID versus PO. When we start talking a lot of healthcare terminology that the average person doesn't understand, especially when they're already angry, they're going to think that you're ridiculing them, you're talking down to them. So we got to make sure that we use common day language, that, you know, we really were supposed to not be taking this medication before the surgery, and so we may have to reschedule the surgery because of this type of heart medication. So, of course, and that's stuff that should be done all the way through the system, and definitely in any sort of pre-op or sessions with the doctor or the surgery staff before the procedures. But at any point in time, you know, there's a lot of people that just block us out. And whenever you're trying to coach them along and do stuff with them, they just don't pay attention. They don't hear it. So it's very important for us to write it down and to have scribes when possible. And now, one of the things that I really work hard at is about with outlandish complaints. If somebody's asking for the world, not to laugh at them or diminish their problem. We live in a society that is a very me-focused society, and I want this, I want it now, I don't want to wait, I don't want to have to work for it, just give it to me, I'm do it. So we have a lot of different mindsets, and sometimes those mindsets are just really shock me. And sometimes whenever we're dealing with even people that we didn't realize had mental health issues, that may have been off certain medications and now could be potentially psychotic, and their perception is a reality, we definitely don't want to laugh or diminish any of their problems. So we want to be very careful that we control ourselves again, and don't bust out laughing at somebody or just poo-poo what their complaint is. On the physical side, we do not want to get into someone's personal space and try to physically intimidate them. We always want to make sure anytime somebody is posing a serious problem to us or is becoming confrontational, we want to make sure we stay about 2 to 3 feet away from that person. If they're a very large person, or if they're indicating some sort of weapons that may be on or about the person, you want to have even a greater distance from them. But for the most part of it, it's somebody that just comes up to the desk, is angry. You want to allow them to vent, but you don't want to get in their personal space. You don't want to lean into them. And if they're smaller than you or younger than you, you don't want to try and physically intimidate them. You want this to be a healthcare environment, a place where they're going to get help, and again, hopefully maybe even be a repeat customer. So a lot of people just want to be heard, and so if we can let them verbalize their complaint, that'll go a long way without us trying to have to interfere and intimidate them. And so we have to be very cognizant of our own body language. If they approach us and we just lean back in our chair and cross our arms, we're effectively communicating to them, I don't care what you had to say. I'm shutting you off. I'm just going to sit here and listen, and then you can walk away because I really don't care. So we have to make sure that we're very careful on how we present ourselves. If we're standing there close to them, we want to make sure that we keep safe distances. But we also want to make sure that we are involved and focused on their conversation and involved and focused on their complaint. So we don't want to take their complaint personal. So we do not want to engage in any verbal contest. So many times, you know, if somebody starts yelling and I hate this place, I hate you people, somebody say, well, you can just get on out of here, I don't care. We can't allow their negativity to affect us. Healthcare, again, recognized as one of the top 4 most dangerous professions in the United States. It's one of the, probably if not the most regulated profession in the United States. It is very hard to work with some patients, and it's very hard to do what healthcare people do. So you want to stay very focused on the positive side of our emotions. And when people are calling us names, we don't want to take those things personally. We just let them roll down our back. We do not want to engage in a verbal contest with them. It doesn't do us any good whatsoever, other than potentially escalating the situation or getting us in trouble because of, you know, when they go back and you have to admit to your boss that, well, I did call that person an SOB because they called me an SOB. That's not the kind of person you want in the workplace that's going to retaliate tit for tat. We want to be able to control the situation, de-escalate the situation, and move forward with our own operations as normally as we possibly can. So what I always encourage people to do, if they haven't done so already, that during a confrontation that you introduce yourself and you learn who they are. So if you're frontline staff and somebody's coming up to you and complaining to you, and you may have already met them, you may not have met them, and I'd say, well, my name's Pat, I work here. What's your name, so we can know who we're talking to, and just make sure you get that. And so by learning and using their name during the course of the event, you're getting into their psyche. You're building a rapport with them, a connection with them. And so when you talk to them, it's like, well, Bob, I am so sorry that you were expecting to leave by 1 o'clock and now it's going to be 3 o'clock, and I do apologize for that. So, and again, you're not going to say whatever their name may be. For the example, Bob, you're not going to say, Bob, I'm sorry, Bob, you can have a seat here. Bob, I'll get you a drink. Bob, I'm going to go over here. And Bob, they should be ready by 3. Bob, please do this. And Bob, thank you. You know, you don't want to make it so redundant that it becomes a falsehood, and people can again can see through that kind of behavior, and they don't appreciate that. But when you use the name appropriately and it within the context of the situation, you are building some rapport with them. And accordingly, once you build a little bit of that rapport with them, get to know the situation, you can kind of read it. Is this going to escalate? Is it going to de-escalate sooner? Am I going to have to get at my supervisor? And if you know their name and you have to relate it to the police department, say all of a sudden Bob, whom you've met, and you know that Bob is with a certain person, or you know it's Bob Jones, or however you acquire the information, and he decides to start tearing up your place before he marches out unhappily, you may have to call the police and file a report on him without having to go into your patient data information. And if Bob was with such and such, and you're getting into medical records, and there's all that hoopla on the HIPAA hanging over your head that you're like, well, can I share this information because Bob was with Chris and Chris would know who Bob is, but Chris is our patient and Chris was just fine. So there again, you've got certain decisions you have to make. How far do we push this? How far do we need to take it? That somebody's going to have to reconcile and then live with the outcome. So pay attention to what and who is near the person complaining, and this is more for staff safety. Again, like I said, panic is contagious, anger is contagious, as we see with riots from the St. Louis area to the Baltimore area back in 2015. Those kind of behaviors increase exponentially. And so you have to decide when you're talking to a person, how many people are going to be confronting you? Simply, are you going to be outnumbered, or are you going to be putting yourself in physical danger? So you need to make sure that you keep safe. And if it looks like the whole family is coming at you, you may have to take them off to the side and say, we can't have an open discussion with everybody's yelling. So if the person the closest next to kin, the mother or a father or one or two of them, come into a private consultation area, that may be more appropriate. But you want to make sure that you control the safety of the situation as much as you can be. And we call this situational awareness, making sure that we're monitoring everything that's going around us, and that you're paying attention to. One of the neatest videos I've seen on YouTube is a video about management by objectives. And if you ever want to Google it, it's called Management by Objectives with gorillas involved in it. And it's a bouncing ball as well. So it's a team of people passing on a basketball. And the idea is to count how many passes a particular team makes while there's a lot of stuff going on in the video. And so then as the video concludes, there's something a narrator for the video asks about different things going on in the video. And some of the stuff that actually occurs catches people catches them off guard, and they're like, well, I never even saw that happening, and it's very blatantly there. So we have to make sure that we pay attention to things going on around us at all times. And again, for a lot of a law enforcement area, for military activities, we call this situational awareness, simply being aware of our surroundings and what's going on that may impact us. So as we move on, we try to isolate an individual if it's possible. As I said, if you bring him to a private area where you can listen to the complaint and you can potentially work to solve or minimize the issue, you don't want to have them yelling at you in the waiting room. You may ignite others that may not have complained about the issue, but are suffering through the same issue, may all of a sudden then chime in like, yeah, I want to be done this too. And if you do happen to give any sort of customer grievance correction, like a gift card, or a discount, then you may have other people be like, well, he's getting something, I want something. So it's very important that if you can listen to complaints in private area, as safest to do so, as well as, or as long as your other people, your other staff members know that you're in there and that you have a way of getting out safely should the situation escalate. And not just getting the person alone, but again, you're minimizing the audience and removing the audience around the complainant. You don't want them to increase their display of drama. You want to make sure it continuously decreases so that you manage things safely. So proper interaction is very important. Calmly listening to the patient or to the customer is, again, most times irate and even belligerent customers just want their voices heard. They may feel as though your AC hasn't listened to their concerns, or you haven't heard the concerns and just don't care. So they think, well, this doctor's rich enough, he doesn't care what I've got to complain. So, but even if they yell or use foul language, allow him to vent as much as necessary, but as safely as possible. Using that energy up will get you a long way. And again, you've got to remain calm. In the last webinar and most trainings I teach, I hit a little bit about AIDIT. AIDIT is a very common form of customer approach, especially in the healthcare world. I think the Studer group may have originated it and pushed it out a lot. And it's about the acronym AIDET, is acknowledge, introduce, duration, explanation, thank you. So as I'm coming up to somebody and approaching them, I'm able to acknowledge them and say, hello, my name is Patrick, and I'll be with you. I'll be with you during the surgery today and taking you in and getting a little bit of your history and prepping you for the surgery. And overall, hopefully the process will take about 2 hours, and then we'll be able to get you home. And then at some point in time, of course, thanking them for their coming to your facility. And just by opening that up, and again, a lot of staff members just have a problem going up and breaking the ice with strangers or new patients. And our younger staff members, if they can't post it to social media, they have a hard time discussing things face-to-face with people. So a trained staff interaction, like an AIDIT tool, allows them to go up to the person, talk to the person, and immediately you get feedback from that person, whether or not they're happy to be there, if they cordially get up and come along with you, if they're shaking their head yes, that I want to come with you and I want to do this, or it may show the staff member that this person is very unhappy about this, or is very, very scared, or is shaking. So we can engage how cooperative this person may or may not be, and allows us to kind of assess their demeanor. Sometimes you may have the old codger that's going to tell the stupid bad jokes over and over again. And sometimes that's just out of fear, and sometimes that's just out of their personality. But again, it allows you very early on to kind of see what tone are we going to be setting with this patient, and how well do we need to be careful with this patient as far as our safety. And very pointedly ask, what are you most upset about? What are you frightful of? What are you angry about? And that can help go a long way in just pointedly saying, what can I do for you? So again, watching their body language, if they become red-faced, if that jaw gets set and that vein starts bulging out of the forehead, the way my fathers used to do when I was younger, and it seemed like to occur quite often. If their fists get balled up in anger, and they go into that unusual pacing. A lot of people pace. I pace frequently. I'm trying to walk around a little bit while I'm on the phone here as I talk with you guys. But whenever it becomes really odd, unusual pacing that we need to be weary of, we have to start wondering, why is this person doing this? And if they escalate, what path do I need to take? What do I need to do? Of course, somebody trying to stare staff down is a good warning sign that they're not going to be cooperative, or they're becoming angry. And again, I encourage people, when they're demonstrating these behaviors, why are you pacing so much? That you appear to be upset, and what can I do to help you, or what needs to happen here? And opening that dialogue gives them the chance to talk a little bit about their issues and what's bothering them, and they maybe just be waiting for the opportunity, waiting for somebody to show that they care. And again, as far as safety goes, if they appear unapproachable, gather extra staff members before anybody approaches. It's something you have to make a judgment call wherever you are with the situation, giving you, again, that situational awareness. But if 2 or 3 people, frontline person that knows what's going on and a supervisor want to approach as a team effect, then that can work very well to help de-escalate and control a situation. So with the verbal abuse or inappropriate language, cussing, and so forth, it's okay to set some boundaries. I've got the example here on this webinar. I can see that you're angry about not getting Xanaxes. However, please do not curse at me. So I'll take your request of physician, and I'll see what we can do to help you. So a lot of people, again, well, that's just the way I talk, or I can use whatever words I want. And again, you have to have some sort of thought process in the back of your head to have a rehearsal to say, I understand you may talk like that at home, and I'm not taking offense at your language, just that we have a lot of other people here, and we would like to manage this situation as properly as we can. Or say, I just don't like that kind of language, and it's distracting me from providing care for you. So every time you drop one of those F-bombs, I get distracted about what we're supposed to be doing, and I really want to try and help you in this situation. So if you can kind of find an avenue to relate back to that person or make it more about them, they're more apt to acquiesce to what you want them to do. So it's a very much a dancing game, but it's about making sure that we don't take it personally, and we find out what bag of tricks may work to help reduce their anger, and make it sure that it's safer for us. So again, allow them to vent, as long as it's done safely, where it's not going to put other people in danger, where it's not going to be scaring other people. They're allowed to rant and rave and cuss and scream out in the waiting room with a bunch of people. It could cause other situations, and you may have other people decide to walk out and say, I'm leaving. I don't want to have my family around this guy for 3 or 4 hours while we're waiting. So again, as I talked about earlier, if you have to confront somebody that's verbally escalating, make sure that you're staying back about 2 to 3 feet so that you do not seem confrontational. You don't want to be all up in their grill, so to speak. You don't want to be in their face. You want to be standing off a little bit to the side, maybe about 45 degrees off to the side, and trying to show them respect and make sure that you're staying safe. And again, controlling our own emotions. Laughing or allowing ourselves to become upset doesn't do us any good. Allows them to control the situation more, or allows them to up the ante and getting angrier. So we got to make sure we stay safe. Active listening skills is very important. We call it empathic listening. Through empathic listening, you're really trying to focus on the person at hand, trying to reconcile their needs in accordance to what you can do to provide them to improve the situation or satisfy them. So you have to listen to them in a totality. So a lot of times when we walk by somebody and we say, hey, how you doing? And they say, okay, fine, and we continue on our paths. But if you walk by somebody and they're like boo-hooing and crying and, oh, I'm fine, but they got tears running down their face, sometimes regretfully, we feel obliged to stop and say, well, you don't look too good. What's wrong? So we really want to demonstrate empathy. Customers get increasingly frustrated when they don't feel like we listen to them or when we care. But when we empathize with them, we can turn that perception around. I mean, how would we feel if we were in their shoes and we don't know processes, we don't know the inside knowledge and procedures, but if we could share that with them and talk about that the prep time back in the OR takes 20 minutes before the surgery even starts. So whenever information is given to them that the surgery is going to last 2 hours, but the prep time may be 20 or 30 minutes and the recovery time may be an hour, but the person's only looking at 2 hours instead of 3 hours plus, it can be very upsetting. So when somebody's pacing and we're using our active listening skills, we're trying to make sure that we are taking their full range of emotions. And we got to be non-judgmental about who's making those complaints. whether it's somebody that looks like that they're on meth or very angry or whatever. Um, we don't want to assume that we are better than that person. We don't want to assume that they're worse off than that. We want to make sure that we keep our thoughts on an even keel and give them the just respect that they're due. So we also want to give them some undivided attention. So even if you only have a couple minutes, or even if you only have 30 seconds, make sure that person is going to understand that you are paying sincere attention to them and to them only. Several years ago, there was a healthcare study done where people would come in and sit down by a patient, and they would talk for about 5 minutes to that patient, seated beside them, and they would get up and leave. A few minutes later, another staff member would come in, talk to that same patient, standing for about 5 minutes, discussing a similar situation, and leave. And those patients were asked, who spent the most time with you? And almost to a T, the people picked those who were seated, that took the time, that maybe made them give a solid effort to say, I'll sit down, I'll be with you, even though it was the same amount of time. So we have to listen very carefully, focus on their feelings and their facts. We have to sometimes allow silence whenever they're screaming, ranting, and raving. We don't always have to jump in there and give them advice or try and tell them what's going on. Sometimes we just got to listen. Sometimes we just got to apologize. So if a broken process or fault for something is the root of their frustration, then again, sincerely apologize for the situation. We can also use reflective questions and paraphrase back to them. Again, I choose Bob as my patient, but you can talk about, Bob, I can hear the anger in your voice, and I can see that you're clearly upset. And it seems like you're saying that the doctor didn't treat you nicely. Is that correct? And so when you're using this reflective questioning, you are solidifying their emotions, and they feel like they're being understood. You're making a connection with them. So Bob here is upset about the way that the doctor's treating him, and as he voices that, and I capture that and reflect it back to him or paraphrase his complaint, and he's like, finally, yeah, somebody's understanding what I'm saying. Now, I may not be able to do anything. The boss or the doctor may be my boss, and that's maybe the doctor's personality, and there may not be anything I can do, but at least I can relate to Bob and let Bob know that I'm listening. So again, being as open and as honest as you can with a person is very important. If an apology is warranted, you can make an apology without saying guilt. So if something were to happen, if the doctor's late or an emergency situation comes up, be honest. But again, like I said, with HIPAA and other privacy rules, sometimes we may not be able to disclose what is going on with the situation at that point in time, or we may not have the information to tell it the full story. But if the patient or the family members or whoever's causing the issue knows that you're working for their best interest and you're trying to help them genuinely, 99% of the time they will understand that. So again, be confident during your discussions. Don't take the conversation over and tell them they're going to do this or they're going to get into that. And we're not worried about a power struggle. We're not paid or given bonuses by the amount of people we tick off during the daytime. We don't get employee bonus points for stuff like that. So we want to speak in a very permissive, non-authoritarian style. So say, please, I do not want you cussing in here like that. We can come into my office and we can sit down and talk. So I want to make sure that I'm cordial with them. I'm giving them a directive, setting some boundaries, and bringing them to an area where they'll be allowed to vent. So I'm working to build that mutual respect with the person complaining and tell them, I will listen to your complaint. I'll see what I can do about it. And I talked a little bit about the apologizing for the situation without actually apologizing and taking fault. And I speak in those terms where somebody gets injured or something happens very badly, and there may be medical lawsuit, insurance claims, whatever. It doesn't hurt again to say I'm sorry things are not going smoothly for you today, and we hope we can help improve things. Certain facilities, I know I was at a facility some years ago and somebody stepped off a curb, and the person was like complaining about, well, that curb shouldn't have been there, it should have been a slope. And one of the employees was like, oh, you're right, I'm so sorry this is happening. And it went into a big litigation process because the employee was telling the person, yeah, that they were right, that the sidewalk was improperly designed, way above the patient's knowledge of the environment, and definitely way above the staff members' knowledge of the environmental design. But there is a way to say, oh, I'm so very sorry you fell, and I can help you, and let me help you. So there are ways to apologize, again, without just saying, oh yeah, this is my fault and we're going to fix it, no matter what it can do. So you can also use contrast statements to fix misunderstandings. So say you accidentally laugh out loud, and you can apologize again for that, and say stuff like, so the last thing I wanted you to do was to have you think I wasn't taking you seriously. I'm very sorry. I think your complaint is important, and we will work to resolve it. So these are, like I've got here, a series of two-part statements that address the understanding and then gives the person assurance that you're working with them, that you're not making fun of them. Again, I've had to do that myself way too many times to clear up what I had given as a misunderstanding. But you want to make sure that any misunderstandings are cleared up as quickly as you can, because they will continue to add to the fire later. One helpful technique to de-escalate complaints is to write the complaint down. Now, wherever I go or wherever I work at, any complaint needs to be documented somehow. Somebody gripes about something, somebody needs to trigger it, no matter how small, because those can add up. But especially ones that take up a significant amount of our work time need to be recorded. And that way supervisors, those that pay, or those that are responsible for managing the facility, can follow up on them. And also the person making the complaint feels validated. So it's like, well, the front desk clerk is writing this down, and I may not be able to talk to the doctor, but she's writing this down because I'm important, and she's taking notes about what I'm saying, so it'll get passed on to the doctor. So the person complaining, for the most part, will get some validation when they see that their complaint is being written down and taking it into consideration that way. And again, I'll follow up maybe in order, whether it be a follow-up phone call from somebody, or whether it be a follow-up in a form of a written letter or a card of apology, maybe in order. But we need to make sure that we track and trend complaints to see what problems can be corrected and what's not correctable. So for the most part, their complaint and anger may not be an issue that's correctable. But again, they're usually wanting somebody to listen to what they've got to say. And if we were in their shoes, we may want somebody to vet us out and listen to us, and or at least maybe correct what our misgivings were. If we were told, I was going to be able to see 20/20 after all my cataracts are given, we want to make sure that we have that given to us. And no matter what, you've got to make sure that you're prepared to listen twice as much as you speak. A lot of these people, like I said, they want to speak, they want to be heard, they want to dominate the conversation, dominate the argument, and make sure that everybody knows that they are right and everybody else is wrong. And so if we bite our tongues and let them use up some of that energy, some of that anger, that will go a long way to de-escalating a situation in a safe manner. And when we talk, we want to make sure that we do it in simple, clear, concise terms. Yes, I am very sorry, and we will work to improve the situation. Or no, I cannot order you pizza at this time, but I know that there's a pizzeria just down the street. So making it as simple. And again, as we wrap this up, training is intentional. So hands-on and face-to-face training for managing aggressive behavior is essential for anyone. There's a lot of things that I reflect back on and make sure that I review and recertify through de-escalation technique classes. There's a lot of good books out there that you can get on. Gavin DeBecker's The Gift of Fear, confrontations, and the de-escalation manuals are out there. So make sure that you take the time to invest in yourself, to invest in your staff with some of the things that can be very dangerous to them. And make sure that it goes through all layers of your staff, anybody that may interact with a person. And so we have some additional resources and training coming up through the IFASC with Vantage Point. Here we have some webinars on June 13th and June 23rd, and we have some regional trainings in person for the active shooter training on June 27th in the Fort Wayne area, and some exercise workshops. So I know I ran about an hour, and if you have any questions, you feel free to email Joyce Fogler, jfogler@vantagepointc.com. Also, Jeff at Fogler, JSFogler at vantagepointc.com. And if anybody has any questions, they're free to jump in here and talk about it. again, it's not easy what you do, and you deal with people in a very delicate situation, so you got to make sure that you keep yourself safe. There is an attachment to the PowerPoint slide, just a small couple bullet points that really cover how to stay safe in a de-escalation situation, and please share those with the other staff members. So appreciate your attendance today, and contact us should there be any more questions.